So then, what is going to represent the people on the left who might once have seen the Democratic Party as in some way an expression of their needs, wants, desires, and interests?
Right.
Are we forever condemned to have two conservative parties just with different names?
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that. I obviously was someone you can probably tell was a huge Bernie Sanders supporter, and he was, he was marginalized and denigrated. And I think that I go back and forth honestly on what I think about the Democratic Party. I mean, we live in a duopoly, obviously. So, and we live in a duopoly where there aren't that many progressives, and even with the squad, we saw they all voted for the $40 billion for proxy war in Ukraine, flooding Ukraine with weapons, basically. I think, though, that we can't totally write off electoralism because, that is the system that exists. If people want to try to grow third parties, that's certainly admirable. Third, fourth, fifth parties. But I do also think, especially on a local level, you have DSA candidates, so candidates endorsed by the Democratic Socialists of America, ranging from AOC to Kristen Gonzalez, who's running now in Queens, and Jabari Brisport, Julia Salazar. And these people undoubtedly make concrete differences in people's material conditions. So while I understand people's frustration with not only the Democrats, but with the squad, I still think that what we have to be doing is building a social movement that makes it impossible for the squad not to do the right thing. Because no one's going to do the right thing on their own. Like, it's probably apocryphal, but it's still very useful, that FDR quote where he told A. Philip Randolph, "These sound great. All these things you're saying about civil rights, the civil rights movement, that sound great. Now go ahead and make me do it." And so the left does, to some extent, I mean, not to some extent, to a large extent, we have to go out and make these politicians do the right thing. We have to force their hand. They need us to force their hand because they can't even if they like certain things, they have to show that there's popular will demanding it.
I was struck in response to my own question that on June 12th, Sunday, June 12th, there was an election in France which surprised an awful lot of people because several political parties on the far left got together, unified, and ran a political campaign and basically got the same votes as the sitting president, Mr. Macron. He's in a very, very bad and weakening position by the hour, but it is not because of the right. It's because of the left that this situation is coming to a head. And I think it portends all kinds of things that are going to happen in this country, too. All right, in the little bit of time we have left, how do you account for the growth of the right wing? Why are right wing politicians, policies, why are we watching this spectacle of the January 6th committee? What happened to make the right wing as strong as it appears to be?
Well, they say that Republicans fear their base and Democrats disdain their base, and I think that's true. So I think that that's a big part of it. I think that also something we can't lose sight of is how funded the right wing is. So, the Tea Party was funded by ALEC. These are basically astroturf movements. They pretend to be organic grassroots movements, which doesn't mean that there aren't regular people who just join them, but they're very funded and coordinated by extremely wealthy institutions, the Koch brothers, for instance. There's also a lot of discipline on the right wing, I think. And there really isn't any equivalent of the Tea Party on the left. The left equivalent of a Tea Party would be an actually like unapologetically fearless populist movement, and actually populist as opposed to the right-wing populism, which is not populism, it's pseudo-populism. But they are well-funded, they're a well-oiled machine. They have a lot of message discipline, and they fear their base. I think those are some of the reasons why. And they're unapologetic. I think that's probably the biggest thing. People get a sense when people are kind of hedging and when they're being hypocritical. And the Republicans are hypocrites, but they're open hypocrites. Democrats pretend not to be hypocrites, and that's in some ways more hypocritical than the other one.